Hi, this is Miss Guerra at Emerson Elementary. I'm one of the guides in primary. I will be doing primary Montessori math. When you get your materials, your packet for distance learning, you'll get an orange pack in your bag. This is math materials for pre-K and K, and this video is going to be showing you how to prepare the materials. So when you prepare the packet, you'll make sure that you have some scissors with you because there's quite a bit of cutting inside. We're going to set this aside. This one doesn't need to be cut. The next group is numbers 0 through 10 that we'll need for activities later on. They need to be evenly cut if they can, and I'm going to show you a trick on how I evenly cut stacked paper. If your child is helping prepare these materials, just make sure you watch them that they don't cut on the numbers. So once those are cut, you're just going to stack them and set them aside. The next set is the 1 through 10 numbers. They will need to be cut out for an activity for a lesson in the future. Now, if you want, you can pause this video so you can work on cutting the numbers out. Now, once you have all your numbers cut out, you're just going to stack them and set them aside. I wanted to show you that you could cut off the spare pieces of paper like this and keep the scraps, because throughout these lessons, children are probably going to lose little pieces of paper that have the numbers on it, and that way that you have spare paper to be able to make more if needed. For this paper, we're going to set it aside. It doesn't need any cutting. Now, for the money book, what you're going to do is you're just going to cut it straight in half. So the money book is really thick, so you're probably going to need to either do it paper by paper or put the book in half, like half paper here, and then cut it . For the first part, and then cut the second half. Now, this book has 2 books together, so after the lesson, they can work on one book one day and then come back to it and do the other book the next day. First book, second book, set aside. So these materials are for our golden beads. We'll do some addition and subtraction if your child is at that point in the curriculum. And so since we're not able to put our hands on the materials, I have decided to copy this onto paper so we can cut this out on paper and the children can do it with paper versions instead of the actual materials. So there's 3 different sections. We have our 1,000 cubes, our 100 squares, our 10 bars, and our units and our ones. Now this is going to be a lot of cutting out, but don't worry, you can just do a little bit at a time, or you can have your child help you. If they're working with the golden beads, then they know what these materials are, so they'll be able to help you cut them out as well. I'm going to start with the 1,000 squares. You can either cut it out just straight across, or you can cut them out individually. It's up to you and how meticulous you are in your cutting. But I am gonna just cut right across. Make sure you don't get the beads in the cutting. So 2,000 cubes. Remember, you can keep this scrap for later use. Now I'm gonna do the 100 squares. Hundred squares. Your 10 bars. Now I know your 10 bars look like 100 square, but we're gonna cut it individually so there's actually 10 bars separated. So after I have it cut out, I'm just gonna go through between each bar. And just cut them out. Now this is the time that you can pause it so you can finish cutting your materials. So now that I have my 1,000 cubes, my 100 squares, and my 10 bars cut out, I'm gonna set those aside just to focus on my units or my ones. Since they're gonna be kind of tiny when I cut them out, I wanna put this away just so I don't get it mixed up for myself. So you can do these how you want. You can do them around in a circle, you can do them around in a square. The children that are familiar with these materials, they're gonna know what they are. So once I have a group set out, I'm just gonna cut, cut, cut. And then I have my tiny units or my ones, and then you can put all those in a Ziploc bag. Now's the time to pause the video so you can finish doing your cutting. Once you're done, you're gonna set your units or your ones aside and you're gonna move on to the next part of your packet. Now, the next part of your packet, and remember, this may be in a different order. Each packet is the exact order, so you're just gonna have to find the material once you get to it if it's not in the exact order that mine is. So this part, there's a 20s board, a 50s board, and a 100s board. So this is the most cutting. We're gonna start with the 20s board. And we're gonna put these in and just set them aside. So you're gonna cut down the dotted line in the middle. And it'll say 20s board and 20s board control. Now for the control, in the classroom, they have it to where it stacks identically on top of it. If you want to, you can match this up to where one page matches the other, but it's up to you and how meticulous your cutting is. Nothing else on the 20s board will be cut out. Just cut it in half, even it out, or leave it as it is and set it aside. The next one is our 50s board. The 50s board is going to be done the exact same way. You're just going to cut it in half. And then you have your 50s board control, and then your 50s board that's just blank. You can even it up and cut it, but it just depends on what you want to do. Leaving it like this is just fine. Okay, so this is what has the most cutting. This is our hundreds board. We have the control chart and we have the board, and then I have a piece of paper that just has the numbers on it. It doesn't have anything written on it. This is the one that you need to cut all of the numbers out of and put in a Ziploc bag. Children are gonna lose these numbers when they're working with it. We see it a lot in the classroom. And so remember to keep all your spare paper. Some of the children will even find spare paper if they're missing one, and they'll make it themselves, because some of them do that in the classroom if they can't find a certain number. So just make sure that you have that available for them so they can do this work as independently as possible after the lesson. Now, I'm going to cut a couple of these pieces before I say you can pause and finish the rest of it, because I want to show you a trick that I do when I'm cutting little things out like this that will help you. Scrap paper. Okay, so I'm going to cut down the long line strip. I'll close this so you can see it. So if you put the paper on top of each other after you've cut long ways and match it up oh so perfectly. A parent might have to do this instead of a child if you want it done this way. And then just carefully snip all the numbers out. It goes a lot quicker this way. Okay, and now we can pause the video so you can finish cutting out the work. All right, once you've cut out all the numbers, you're gonna put the hundreds board and the control chart and the numbers and set it aside. If you have a Ziploc bag, those numbers go great in a Ziploc bag. The next packet that's inside of it has a lot of other materials that don't necessarily need to be cut out, but some of them do. So the shorter and longer activity, that doesn't need to be cut. Measure in the room, that doesn't need to be cut. Now this does need to be cut. This will be a graph that we do, like collecting data for children. This will be a lesson that's in the videos. And so there are 3 different sheet activities on here. And I'm just going to cut out all 3 of them, because when they're put all together with all the squares and the numbers, the children might get really confused, and I want to make sure that they know that this is just for one of the paper activities after the lesson. And then set those aside. Now the next one is an activity that has measure the outdoors. The inchworm sheet, that can just be set aside. Nothing in here needs to be cut. the shears, the shovel, the rake, the gloves, and the seed packet, they can be cut out, but you also have the option for not cutting it out. And I'll show you how. So the inchworms just get cut out in strips. This is for a non-standard measurement activity, and so they're going to use the inchworms to measure the pot. So, and the clippers and the shovel and the seeds. So if you leave it on the paper, they can do it this way as well. In the lesson, I will have it exactly like this to show them how to do the work, but you can also cut them out. It just depends what you want to do. So I will pause it so you can finish cutting out your inchworms. Okay, after you've done that, set it aside. This piece of paper just needs to be cut into 3 pieces. You can cut around the dotted lines if you want to, but it goes back to how meticulous you want your cutting to be. Then once you get done, set those aside. This is a bead stare activity that can be just set aside. It doesn't need to be cut. Now, this is a money paper. You can set that aside. It doesn't need to be cut. Here's another inchworm measurement outside that doesn't need to be cut. Now these papers is for linear counting, and it starts from our 1 chain all the way up to our 10 chain. These will need to be cutted in half on the dotted line. There's 2 of each one, so after they've done one day, they can go back and do another if they choose. Now the first one that we have has the numbers already written, and the second one has the numbers that are missing. So right after the activity, you could do tracing this one, and the next day they could do the one we're filling in the number. All right, I'll pause the video so you can cut those. Once you're done cutting those, you're gonna set those aside. Now we also have other papers that have the dotted line in the middle. These are gonna be cut the same way. You're just gonna cut straight down through the line, stack it together, and set it aside. Now, since there's 2 copies, I forgot to mention this earlier, just make sure that the same ones stay together. So then when the children are doing their activity after the lesson, that everything's there for them. Now pause so you can finish cutting those. The next one is for our decimal layout. On this one, it says fold. So you're gonna fold those in half and set them aside. There's a lot of papers that have just a cut in the middle. Just make sure if it's a similar paper that you're keeping them together. And then I'll pause the video so you can finish that. Okay, the next one is for cards and counters. This one needs to be individually cut out. Come to help us. You. Don't mind the puppy dog. She's just wondering what's going on. Go on. And you're going to cut them out just like this on the black line. All right, and you can pause so you can finish doing your cutting. Okay, the next set of papers are, there should be 5 pages of these. They are called our 3-part cards. Most of the teachers have planned 3-part cards in all of the different curriculum areas because the children in our classrooms just absolutely love 3-part cards. So I'll show you how to cut these out. I'm just going to do one page and then I'll pause it so you can finish doing your cutting, and I'll finish doing mine. These might be a little awkward where you're like, I don't know if I'm cutting this right. As long as you're staying on the black line and cutting out all the stuff that's in the black line, it will be just fine. Oop, I'm gonna set this aside so it doesn't get mixed up with my scraps. Scraps. Okay, so each page should have this white paper, that's the biggest, these 2 pieces of white paper that are the medium size, and then 2 pieces that are the smallest. When you get done, you should have 10 of each one. Now we'll pause the video so then you can finish doing your cutting. Okay, so when you're done with all of your materials, I suggest that all of your Ziploc bags and anything that you've put in envelopes go back into the orange folder and closed. Mine isn't very pretty. Sorry, guys. Some of my kids would be like, Mrs. Guerra, that is not beautiful. And then close it, and you can put math on it, or you can have your child write math. And then they have it for their lessons. Now, all the math lessons that I'll be presenting in primary for pre-K and K, if you're hooked into my lessons, everything that you need is going to be in this folder. You'll watch the lesson on YouTube, and then you'll have a follow-up paperwork with this. Since children aren't able to access the materials in our classroom, I tried to make it as practical and kinesthetic as I could for each child. But if you have any questions or concerns about setup, or if your child is having any issues whatsoever in the math area, please email me. My email is thomana1@tulsaschools.org. Bye guys, see you later at lessons.